Welcome back to the Donkey Vote Political Podcast for another interview. And today we are honored to be joined by the federal member for Petrie, Luke Howarth. Luke, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be with you. Yeah, I'm Luke Howarth, federal member for Petrie, and happy to have a chat with you today. Well done to all of you.
Yeah. So I realize I pronounced your last name wrong, so it's Howarth, correct?
Yeah, Luke Howarth. Yeah, Luke
Yeah.
Howarth, federal member for Petrie up in Queensland. Yeah.
Yeah. So just for the viewers out there who may not entirely know a lot about your background and who you are as a person and your political career and yeah. If you're able to give them a little brief explanation description of yourself just before we get into the questions, that would be awesome.
Wonderful. Thanks, Aaron. So my name's Luke Howarth. I'm the federal member for Petrie. I was elected as the federal member for Petrie in 2013 when the coalition formed government with Tony Abbott as Prime Minister. And I've been in Parliament now for 10 years as of last year. I was on the backbench for quite a few years, serving on different committees. And in the Morrison government, I was Assistant Minister for Community Housing, Homelessness and Community Services, as well as Assistant Minister for Youth and Employment Services. And now in the federal opposition, I'm the Shadow Minister for Defence Industry and Defence Personnel. And I'm married to Louise. I have three sons, and I grew up in my electorate up here in Petrie, up in Queensland. And prior to coming into Parliament, I'd worked in the private sector, running my own business and in sales before that, never had a government job.
Yeah, and I think that's something we've come across a lot when we've done these interviews. A lot of people, not necessarily have come from, working in government, working as a, elected officer or that sort of roles. Like going into Parliament, a lot of people come from all across careers, whether that be law, whether that be small business, whether that be accounting, whether that be engineering or whatever. There's a lot of people who come across different career backgrounds to join politics. So it's a really good sphere to enter, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's important to have a cross section of people in the community, men and women that have had different experiences around the states and territories throughout Australia. And I see that, particularly in the Liberal Party, we have a broad range of people from, teachers, nurses, police officers, small business people. It's quite interesting, as well as people that have worked for parliamentarians before. But across the Parliament, we're seeing more of that, which is good.
Yeah. The better, the more diverse backgrounds in terms of careers, the better, I say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll now get started with our questions. So I have the first question. So Luke, how was your high school and university life? And do you have any memorable moments?
Yeah, look, school for me was quite good. I went to two different high schools. I changed high schools, but I was at St. Patrick's College in Shorncliffe and Frawley College in Scarborough, and it was quite good. Yeah, I had a good time. I played a lot of sport when I was at school. I was always quite social at school, but it was particularly good. And then I went on to TAFE as well, in various qualifications that I did there. So, yeah, I particularly just enjoyed the social aspect of school and playing a lot of sport, really. It certainly is a great time of your life when you're at school. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, bonding with friends and doing that sort of thing. But do you have any specific memorable moment that you'd like to share for our viewers or um
Look, I think with sport, presenting skills in sport was great for me. You know, athletics and rugby and cross country. It's an inter-school sport which I really enjoyed. In Queensland, we have QE2 Stadium, named after late Queen Elizabeth. It was built after the Commonwealth Games up here in Brisbane, and so I represented school sport there at athletics, and particularly really enjoyed that. But I had good teachers, and school was fine for me.
And in athletics, did you focus more on were you more of a sprinter or long distance runner, or were you more into the field events?
Yeah, I did do some field events. When I was younger, I did high jump, and then I did hurdles, 110-meter hurdles, which I represented the school in as well. So that was probably my best event.
Ah, that's nice. That's cool. Did you ever think about pursuing that as a career path down the line? Instead of maybe running your own small
No,
business?
look, growing up, I was particularly also involved with judo. So I've got a black belt in judo, represented Queensland in judo. I started doing that when I was a kid at around 7 years of age with a good mate of mine. And so keeping fit, health, training for competition was always important. I think that's where I developed a competitive nature. And in politics, you need to be competitive as well. So, but no, my father came from a small family business background. So, small business I was always interested in. And so I did that before coming into Parliament. But I sort of had three goals, career goals, which I wanted to do. One was I'm good with people, so I wanted to be a sales executive like my late uncle, who was a bit of a mentor for me. Two, I wanted to run my own business, and three, I wanted to serve people in Parliament, which I'm currently doing.
Yeah, man, that's good that you've achieved all your three goals that you set for yourself before you wanted to enter. Like as you said, you've I think we're going to touch on that later on, but you've been a sales assistant and you are now a parliamentarian. So it's always important as well for young people out there to always try and strive and achieve your goals. And as they say, if you have high distinguished goals, if you fall, you'll still end up in a pretty decent position.
Yeah, I think setting goals is important no matter what it is, and there's no right or wrong around that. I think different individuals will have different goals depending on their interests, their background, and influences that your family have on your life as well. So I think if you can set those goals and go for it, particularly whilst you're young and you have family responsibilities or and so forth, it's a really good thing to do. So I would encourage anyone watching to write down their goals at least annually and to go for it, and um, maybe have shorter term goals that you can achieve sort of in a few months or within 6 months, goals for the year, and then sort of goals for a few years ahead, and just keep pursuing that and doing your best, and I think you'll have a really rewarding life.
Yeah, and I think just touching on what you said there with short-term goals, I think short-term goals in general are probably a lot more realistic than long-term goals. You can always have a pretty distant long-term goal, but if you don't have pretty realistic and reasonable short-term goals, achieving that long-term goal down the line can be pretty challenging. So I think it's good to have a balance
Mm.
of having short-term realistic goals and a long-term sort of dream sort of goal, but something that you think you could achieve down the line.
Yeah, I think that's right, Francis, 100%. And setting goals not just for career paths and work and study, but perhaps relationships with others, family members, fitness, spiritual, whatever it is that you want to set goals for in your life. Health, it's a good thing to do, and it can be quite rewarding. So, well done.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we'll move on now to our second question. Tobias.
Yes, I have the next question. It states on your parliamentary website you didn't actually complete university education. Instead, you 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 completed a TAFE courses including a diploma in business. Are you able to talk about this pathway and how TAFE helped you enter the workforce?
Yeah, thanks, Tobias. For me, I had no idea what I really wanted to do when I completed year 12. So I wasn't sure what to do. So at the time, I went and did a hospitality course through TAFE, a food and liquor course, and completed that. That was a 6 month course, basically in bar work and silver service at the time. And then I went into sales. So I didn't really go into that industry. I lined up a job through my uncle working in the music industry, and often jobs are found through people you know. Life is about relationships, so that's very important, whatever industry that you want to go into. And I developed a career in sales, and then I went back and did a diploma in business because I wanted to start my own business. And I thought a diploma in business would be able to give me some skills in relation to that, which is what I did. So that career path and that study through TAFE and completing year 12 was right for me. And it then enabled me to achieve some of the goals which I wanted to do. So certainly that was the right fit, and university isn't for everyone. Some people will go on to other forms of study or perhaps do an apprenticeship or go into the workforce straight away. But a lot of people are doing university now, and that's a good fit for them as well.
Yeah, 100%. I know Tobias can speak a little bit more on this, but I think touching on that point there, you said that, when you were finishing high school, you didn't necessarily know what you wanted to do. I think in externally that's a big issue for a lot of young people. If Tobias, you want to speak more on this as well?
Yeah. So there's I know people who still don't know even if they want to do this certain pathway, or they have still no clue. It's a bit challenging if you don't know what you want to do exactly, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's normal. I don't think people should be too concerned if they get to the end of year 12 and they're unsure of where they want to go from here. The only advice that I would give people that are in that situation, young people throughout Australia, is just stay busy and do your best. So do your best in high school. Obviously, where you finish in high school, the score that you achieve and so forth isn't necessarily going to define you. So I think, but if you do your best and stay busy, the main thing is whether you're studying, whether you're working full time, whether you're studying part time and working part time, or perhaps you're traveling, if you've got finances to do that, or volunteering, helping others, whatever it may be. The main thing is that you're busy, so that when you are pursuing your career at some point in the future, people say, what have you been doing since you finished high school? The main thing is that you're not sitting around, sleeping in late, not doing anything for 6 months. People want to see that you're busy, actively improving, learning, and so forth. So that's the only advice I'd give for people. And if you are studying full time, I think it's important too to work part time to get some experience around customer service and communication. And it doesn't have to be necessarily in the industry that you're studying. So yeah, that would be my tips. Stay busy, get a part-time job, and perhaps find a mentor for people that for the industry that you want to get into. Just have a coffee catch up once a month for 6 months. That would help you, I believe, as well.
Yeah, 100% agree there. And I think me and Tobias, I did a little bit of internship work at my local EO office, and I know Tobias as well. You're still currently working at McDonald's, correct? At
Yeah,
Macca's. Yeah.
yeah,
So I think it is really important to find time to do other things and work in sort of different other industries, not actually related to maybe what you want to study, as you said, just because it really does build up your communication skills, and it puts you in a place where you don't necessarily, you might not necessarily like the people you work with, but it's been good to be put into some situations where, you don't get to pick and choose who you're with. So it's a good way for you to learn communication skills and, deal with people, especially in that sort of field, because down the line when you get a job in the future in your chosen career, you don't know who you're going to be working with. So especially even in politics, like you don't know who's going to be elected a lot of the time. So you're going to meet new people all the time. So I think it's important, as you said, to while you're studying to try and get into jobs, whether that be in hospitality, whether that be in fast food, whether that be in any sort of industry. Just getting yourself in there and experiencing what work life is like is so important, and it can really help you down the line.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're right there. Well done.
Yeah. So we'll now move on to our third question, and this does touch a little bit on your work as a sales assistant. So, George.
Hi. So, from 1993 to 2001, you worked as a sales assistant for Sony in Brisbane. How was this experience overall? And do you have any memorable moments? Maybe an angry customer here and there?
Yeah, so it was a great experience back then. Before iPhones were big and changing technology, Sony was probably regarded as the best electronics company in the world. In the music industry, video, TV, they were extremely successful company, big Japanese company, obviously, and it was very good. I wanted to be a sales executive, sales representative, and so I did that at Sony Australia. Went on to achieve in the broadcast and professional division at the time for my line of sales, sales rep of the year twice, which was great. So yeah, I was good at what I did. I enjoyed working for Sony. They're a very good company. There were some memorable times. I once, because Sony Australia and Sony Group of Sony PlayStation, Sony Music were all together, I had to go and set up an audio visual system in a hotel room for Michael Jackson, who was staying in Brisbane
wow.
in a world tour at the time, the late Michael Jackson, who was a music. So I never got to meet him, unfortunately, but there was a lot of security in his room. And so there was 3 or 4 security people there that were checking what I was bringing in and what I was doing. But it was quite some suite. I think I was quite young at the time, in my early 20s, and I'd never seen a hotel room as big as this one. So that was a memorable moment, but it taught me a lot there. And the skills that I developed there, I think, certainly helped me in my political career as well.
Yeah, especially as a sales assistant, as you said, you have to speak to people, you have to try and, get people to agree with to buy a product. And it is pretty similar to being a politician and campaigning in the sense that, you're trying to get people to vote for you and try and get people to back your ideas. And it's similar, as I said, you're trying to get people to buy a product and also as a sales assistant, but you're also as a politician trying to get people to buy into your product and vote for you.
Yeah, 100%. That's correct. Yeah. People aren't going to vote for you if they don't like you and they don't believe in what you stand for. So that's 100% correct.
Yeah. We'll now move on to our next question. So, you then proceeded to work as a managing director for your family's pest control business after I believe you finished your career as a sales assistant at Sony, using your TAFE qualification as well. Are you able to talk about your experience within your family-run business and how are these small businesses so important to the Australian economy?
Yeah, look, the reason I wanted to run my own business, my father had his own business, which was that business. And I ended up purchasing half of that business off my father at the time. So my wife Louise and I, we sold our house to buy half the business off my parents, and I grew that business. It was an easy business because father had been involved with it for such a long time, but it was just him and one other employee, so to speak. And so by the time we finished with it and sold it in 2019, we had about 20 staff. It was quite a bit bigger, but it was very rewarding and it was a good business. So in Queensland, the pest control industry is quite big because of the warm weather up here, and people want to protect their homes from heat and from termites, which damage timber homes. And so, yeah, really, once again, my sales experience there helped me. And people want to be able to trust a business. So if you run a small business, they'll buy your service or use your business if they trust you and they trust your business to do a good job. So that's what I understood. That's what I communicated to my staff. And we were able to grow that business probably 10 times the size of what it was when I originally purchased half of it. So it was a good outcome for, my wife Louise and I, and it was a good outcome for my father too, who was able to retire and still get an income from the business with me running it. It was a good outcome for the 20 or so staff that I employed as well. One of those staff who I employed after I sold the business, in fact, not just one, quite a few, but one locally in my electorate here, has gone on to start her own business that is well known throughout the Redcliffe Peninsula and other parts of Brisbane in my electorate now. And she's grown that business quite considerably after she finished working for me. So that's a great outcome there as well.
Yeah, and I think as well, a lot of people out there probably would listen to this podcast, might be running their own small businesses or might have family who run their own small businesses, and they are very integral toward the economy in a sense. I think people do underestimate how important they are. Like they employ so many Australians, and they're pivotal. There's of course there's your big corporations, but the small businesses are really the backbone of the Australian economy, and they keep employment going, and local jobs are so important. So I think small businesses in general are pretty underestimated.
I think it's so important. Small businesses, micro businesses, medium-sized businesses, they're all very important. Some 80% of Australians are employed in the private sector. 20%, I guess, in government. But I think small business is particularly important, and we need to make sure that people that have a go are rewarded, and that government doesn't get in the way and tie up small business with increased regulation, costs, and red tape, because all that is obviously passed on to others. In the economy, creates inflation, but small business is particularly rewarding, and it's a good thing to do. And so I would encourage people to do it. I found that the reason why I sold my house is I figured, well, if we've got a successful small business that's going well, I can always buy another house later on. And so I found it very rewarding to run a small business. And there's a lot of Australians that do it, whether they're sole traders or subcontractors or partnerships, or whether they run a company. It is all very important, and government should get out of the way of people running small businesses and make it easier for them, not harder.
If you live in or around Blythe, you're going to want to hear this. We're giving your town 20 million.
Yeah, so welcome back to the Donkey Vote podcast again after a little short break. We're back here with Luke, Tobias, George, and myself. And I believe we were in the middle of talking about small businesses and their impact on the economy, weren't we, Luke?
Exactly right. Yes, that's what we were talking about, small businesses and how they have an absolutely integral part of the Australian economy, and should be supported at every level of government. But also they can be very rewarding, and I take my hat off to all small business owners for what they do for Australia.
Exactly, and I think as well, a lot of people have family-owned small businesses. So I guess sometimes family-owned small businesses sometimes can be a little bit challenging, maybe. Sometimes families don't always get along well, but I think they're also very, very integral. And I know you previously said before that your pest control business was a family-run business, family-owned, and your wife and your father were part of it. So I do get there could be a little bit of challenges sometimes, especially with families and that sort of thing. But I think they are as well another integral part of our economy, and people don't talk enough about family-owned small businesses.
I think with small businesses and family-owned businesses, it's important to hook in and work hard and do long hours to make the business a success, and obviously have the right service or product. But I think in my own experience too, you also need, days off. So if you're getting together on a Sunday for a lunch, then you probably don't want to be talking about the family business on Sunday
Very
at lunch.
true.
You need a bit of a separation there if you want it to be successful for, whether it's husband or wife or father and son, have a little bit of a separation there at time, because obviously the business isn't what defines us as people, or any job. What defines us as people alone The other thing that's important in small and family business is cash flow, to make sure that you get paid on time for your service or product that you're delivering. And many small businesses, if they don't manage that well, can end up going under. So I think people should pay and will pay if the job's done right and the product is delivered correctly.
Yeah, and I think especially with small businesses, in general, like their break evens are very, very small. So the all the support you can give to them is crucial. Like, sometimes it is better to go to your local run milk bar in town rather than going to maybe the big supermarket, because it's more of a service, I guess, and you know what you're getting there. Well, with a big supermarket, sometimes it's just stock standard milk and bread, that sort of thing. But at like a milk bar, a little small business there, you'll get the interaction with the owner. You know them pretty well, so I think that's an added extra incentive to go to small businesses.
Yeah, look, there's plenty of different small businesses, and people can pick and choose small business. Certainly, small and family businesses are very important.
Yeah. We'll now move on to our next question. Tobias.
Yes, who would you say is your political role model and idol?
Yeah, I mean, when I came into federal parliament in 2013, I had a great deal of respect for former Prime Minister, the Honourable John Howard. So I thought he did a great job as Prime Minister for 11 years, from 1996 through to 2007. I particularly admired the fact that he didn't see himself just as a New South Wales Prime Minister, but as a Prime Minister for all Australians, regardless of what state or territory you lived in. And I think he made a strong case for doing what's right for the Australian people and not always what's popular. So he would often do what is popular, of course, as all politicians need to listen to the people. But, there were occasions where I think the Australian public had a particular view on something, and Prime Minister Howard said, look, this is why we need to do it. It's in the national interests, and I believe we're going to get it done. And he was obviously rewarded with 4 terms as Prime Minister, which is pretty unprecedented now, given that since he left office, we haven't had a Prime Minister elected more than 1 term in a row to date. So for me, John Howard did a lot of good things as Prime Minister and was proud of our country, Australia, as we should be. We are a country here in Australia. Whether you're born here in Australia, whether you migrated to Australia, or whether you're, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australian, we have a wonderful country, and the 26 million or so people that live here are very blessed to live in this country. And I think with Prime Minister Howard, he always, I guess, was led in that area, and I was particularly proud of him, and that's what encouraged me, I guess, to get in federal parliament after watching what he did as Prime Minister.
Yeah, and I think John Howard especially is a very big political figure, and from the interviews that we've done previously, a lot of Liberal members, state and federal members in Victoria and across the country have said John Howard's a political idol of theirs. So I think what he did, especially for those 11 years of government, was really crucial. And me, Tobias, and George were all born during the John Howard years, and we're all part of that whole sort of baby boom sort of period in the middle 2000s, when John Howard and Treasurer Costello set up that whole baby boom sort of thing, that you get your payment when your child's born, which can go towards adversary things that you have to buy for your child, whether that be toys, nappies, that sort of thing, just the basic essentials, which are really, really crucial at that time. And as Treasurer Costello said at that period in time, you have one child for pay for the to pay for the father's pension, one child to pay for the mother's pension, and then one child for the country. So I think in that time, Treasurer Costello and Prime Minister Howard did a very, very good job.
It's interesting that you say that, because it definitely influenced me as a young man interested in politics. I've got 3 sons as well that were born in that period, and so, and even now, I jokingly say to people with 3 kids, one for mum, one for dad, one for the country. Well done. So, yeah, and that payment that you mentioned, the baby bonus or whatever at the time, is really quite small compared to what parents would receive today through childcare and paid parental leave and things like that. But it did certainly pave the way, for Australians to be encouraged to have more children as our population dwindled, rather than just relying on immigration. So, and as a father of 3 sons, it's rewarding. It's rewarding to have children and to see them do well. And I found that with my own kids, it was rewarding for them to have brothers as well. So, I encourage people that want to have a family to go for 3 and to have one for the country as well. So, yeah, well done.
Yeah, and I think in general, it's not really talked about much that our birth rate's considerably low below population replacement. So that whole policy and the baby bonus payments and that whole policy around having 3 kids is really crucial to try and lift the population up, because migration is a great way of continuing the population at a certain level, but we have to make sure that in the future, because our population is aging a lot like Western countries, that we do have a sustainable workforce into the future, and we're not entirely dependent on migration as a source of workers and a source of employment and a source of workers and people in the economy.
Yeah, migration is very important, and Australia is very much a multicultural country, and migrants have played a huge part in the success of this country, and they're rightly proud to become Australian, and they want to be part of Australia's positive future as well. And so when I go to citizenship ceremonies, I see new Australians being sworn in, and how they love this country and want to contribute to it. So obviously governments need to balance that with ensuring that the levels are right for the time. Obviously, at the moment, right now in 2024, early 2024, and we've just come out of 2023, we've had a bit of a housing shortage. And so, increasing migration to huge levels like we've probably seen under the Albanese Labor government probably isn't the right thing to do, given that there is a housing shortage. So governments do need to weigh migration levels up with what's happening at the time. And so, but certainly migration will continue to have a big place in Australia. And for everyone that is migrated here, they're most welcome, and we appreciate their contribution to this country.
100% agree with you there. Yeah. We'll now move on to our second last question. George.
What made you run in the 2013 federal election for Liberal Party, and what made you join the Liberal Party?
So thank you, George. So yeah, look, I joined the National Party actually when I was quite young, when I was about 18 or 19. My parents at the time followed the Queensland Nationals, and they had a good premier up here at the time who was good for small business and good for families. But then I found that I needed to join the Liberal Party when I wanted to run in city, because I was more city based. And so I joined the Liberal Party, and in Queensland we're now the Liberal National Party, but I sit in the Liberal Party room in Canberra. And I wanted to run in the 2013 election when I saw the Labor governments at the time, with the Rudd governments, destroying some of the policies that John Howard had set up. John Howard and Peter Costello had balanced the budget and paid off debt, and then we saw big deficits under them, under the Labor Party. We also saw a migration system, people migrating to this country via paying people smugglers, doing it illegally, and that was out of control. Not just because people weren't coming to Australia under the way every other migrant has done, the right way, but they're also seeing people die at sea, with 60,000 people come by people smuggling boat, and a number of those people die. Snap decisions like shutting down the live cattle export overnight also made a big difference. And Julia Gillard saying there would be no carbon tax under any government that she led, and then immediately coming to government, implementing a carbon tax rubbed me up the wrong way. And so I decided in 2011 that I wanted to run for the federal seat of Petrie in the 2013 election, to try and toss out the Labor government, because I thought the performance at the time, and my seat in 2013 obviously helped do that when we won 90 seats in 2013 and then went to 9 years of Polish government. In the 2022 election, but we lost another seat. Held my seat, and I now find myself in opposition. But once again, that's the season that I find myself in, and as a federal parliamentarian and the federal member for Petrie, and in the federal Liberal National opposition, we'll continue to listen to people locally, but do the right thing by Australians and try to be a good opposition. So at the 2025 election, people have a choice. If they're not happy with the Albanese Labor Green Party government that provides support to the Senate, they can choose to vote Liberal National Party for the leadership of Dutton, and under the leadership of myself, the MP, candidates locally throughout the country to form government. And we'll now have every day to listen to Australians and have them trust us in 2025.
Yeah. Just talking about a little bit what you said there with the whole Rod Gillard government around people smuggling. I think former Prime Minister Scott Morrison did a very good job controlling the borders right after 2013. And I think a lot of people saw the detention centers and that sort of thing, and stopping people smuggling as I know a lot of young people would have thought it was a bad thing, bad decision. But at the time, I think in general, we're not trying to do it just to stop people from entering the country. We're actually trying to protect people's lives, as you said. And people smuggling boats coming in are very, very dangerous, especially for those people who are trying to seek asylum and try and seek a better way of life. And doing that sort of thing, trying to smuggle yourself across waters, it can be very dangerous, and a lot of people have lost their lives doing it. So it's not only coming just from the sense that we don't really want people like illegal migrants. We're coming from the sense that we're trying to protect those people's lives in general.
We're absolutely 100% right, and that's where myself and others, have a responsibility to educate Australians that might not understand that Australia is a very generous country when it comes to refugees and our humanitarian aid through Australian Aid. We take some 20,000 refugees a year, but we also contribute to Australian Aid in our region and around the world to help others. The reality is that you can't bring every refugee to Australia. The best way that you can help refugees is to ensure that governments in other countries are properly looking after their people, that Australian Aid helps build a better lifestyle for those people there as well. But yes, we do take some refugees here, but we shouldn't be turning a blind eye to people smugglers, putting refugees' lives at risk. And you're right, under Scott Morrison, when he was the immigration minister in the coalition government in 2013, he did stop the boats quickly. Lives were saved, and the Australian population supported that at the time very strongly. And not just the Australian population in one particular group or one particular state, but it was actually widespread, from immigrants that had migrated to Australia over many decades before to Australians born here like myself, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. They all supported that policy of stopping the boats, and the coalition was elected strongly on the back of that. The three platforms that were put in place around, turning boats around to having offshore processing and giving temporary protection visas did work well. And we've already seen the Labor government now pull down at least one of those piers, and that has sent some signals to people smugglers to try and get the trade going again, but hopefully that won't continue, and we'll see, people protected. But to anyone watching, you should be proud of Australia and the efforts that we provide internationally to help people in need, because Australia, across many governments over many decades, has done a very, very good job.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. And yeah, I think it is something that our viewers should take into note. I know we have a lot of younger viewers out there who may think that people smuggling and boats being stopped was necessarily a bad thing. But I think in a sense, as we've talked about, Luke, I think in general that the boats being stopped under Scott Morrison was a very good policy, and as you said, a lot of people from all across Australia agreed that it was the right thing to do at the right time.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. We'll now move on to our final question for you, Luke. I do realize it's nearly been almost an hour we've been with you, so I do really appreciate you taking the time and spending time with us. But yeah, so our final question is, finally, what's one piece of advice that you'd give to students in 2024, especially those who are starting university or high school?
Well, look, first of all, to all those students watching, thank you for what you do and thank you for your contribution to Australia. Regardless of your age, whether you're 15 or whether you're 24, you're in that youth bracket. Thank you for what you do. You're important, and you can go and make a contribution. I think it covered some of the advice I do with them around. If you leave school, that you stay, get a part-time job, find yourself a mentor, and or not going to study, go straight to work. But the main thing they'd be just 6 months off and sleep in a day like that. If you start in school, high school, just do your best. Do your best. Listen to your parents who love you. Take their guidance, but yeah, just continue to do your best is what I do. You can set goals for, it might be a sporting goal or it might be an academic goal. So do that as well. But really, my advice is just to thank young people watching for what you do for the country. Continue to do your best. Love this country. We've got a lot to be proud of, and obviously you're part of the future, and so the contributions that you make will depend on the success that Australia has in the future.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there as well. And we've touched a lot about goal setting and that sort of thing, but as you did say as well, don't spend 6 months for those students out there who may not be studying, just sitting there doing nothing. Always be out there to try and work hard and always put yourself forward and try and do things, try and discover new things, because I think your story, Luke, is very crucial there, that you don't have to come from an esteemed university background, having a law degree, having a commerce degree or whatever, having a PhD to enter politics. You can come from anywhere, and it's about finding what you want to do. And that those times where you may be lost, it's really, really important that you put yourself out there and you try new things to discover what you actually want to do in the future, and you don't waste that precious moments in time sitting there doing nothing and sleeping. Luke, I think your audio's gone off a little bit.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Is it
Yeah, and
there
we're
you go.
busy. So if you're not going to study, people to work at least 30 hours a week. So, but thank you. Yeah, thank you for now. Can you hear me now, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, we might leave it there. Thank you for everything that you're doing. It's lovely to see you all.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you again, Luke, for joining us. There's been a little bit of technical difficulties, but I still we really appreciate you coming on and talking to us and seeing you again after talking to you nearly 4 years ago.
Yeah, well, you all look a lot bigger now.
That's true. That
You're
is
all
very,
young
very
men.
true.
So, well done. Keep up the good work. And if you're ever in Parliament in Canberra or you see me around in Victoria, come up and say good day, hey?
Yeah, we won't forget you, Luke. Don't worry. Thank you guys again for watching our interview here with Luke Howarth. We do realize that Luke had some technical difficulties there. So, Luke, if you're out there, thank you for watching and thank you for being on the podcast and talking to us. Our next interview will be with Dylan White, state Labor member for Tiny, and yeah, that should be released in the next day or so after this has been released.